Actus stands for Algorithmic Contract Types Unified Standards. Actus proposes a global standard for the consistent representation of financial instruments. The goal of Actus is to break down the diversity in financial instruments into a manageable number of cash flow patterns, so-called contract types. That means Actus specifies the semantics of a contract per contract type by providing the algorithms and formulas for computing the cash flows explicitly. Actus defines a taxonomy as displayed on this slide. They identified several different contract types and grouped them by various aspects. For example, in fixed income, there are contract types that expire, that means they have a maturity or not. On the maturities, there is a PAM. PAM stands for Principal at Maturity, which means the principal is repaid when the contract expires. A bond is an example for this contract type. We have implemented a big part of the Actus framework in Haskell. The framework allows to generate projected cash flows, that means cash flows that will happen in the future. There might be unknowns for such cash flows, like exchange rates, etc. These observables are provided as risk factors in the framework. Risk factors are variables in projected cash flows that are only filled in when the real values are observed. Actus maintains a reference implementation in Java, together with a set of reference test cases in a separate repository in GitHub. The test cases are a collection of Actus contracts per contract type which explore the properties of the given contract type. I would like to quickly show you the Actus reference test cases on GitHub. The test cases are with the Actus Foundation on GitHub. There is a repository called Actus Tests. In here, the README mentions that the Actus core Java implementation is tested against this test suite. Our Haskell implementation of the Actus framework is checked also against these officially provided test cases. I will show you later examples of these as well. In the tests directory, you'll find test cases specified per contract type. The contract type is part of the name of the files. Let's have a look at the test cases for PAM, the Principal at Maturity contract type. The JSON file contains a list of tests for PAM contracts. A contract has an identifier, here it is PAM01, and the terms, which again specify the contract type and the other mandatory fields for the contract specified in this test case. For example, we see that the contract makes interest payments on a monthly basis. This is specified by the parameter cycle of interest payment. Initially, $3,000 have to be deposited into the contract, which at maturity will be paid back. The contract runs for 1 year, from the 1st of January 2013 to the 1st of January 2014. The to field is to cut off events after this date. This is just to make some tests smaller. The fields data observed and events observed are for specifying the risk factors. In this example, there are no risk factors. The result field explicitly states which events are triggered by the contract or the full life cycle of the contract. We see the monthly interest payments, the initial deposit, and the repayment at maturity. As this is the first test case in the file, it has relatively simple contract terms. When you scroll down, you'll find much more complicated terms that trigger other types of events as well. The Actus Foundation also has a demo application. With the demo application, you can simulate contracts. Here you see the different contract types. Let's go again to the PALM and let us fill in the example that we saw in the test case. Contract type was PALM. The role is important as well. The contract identifier, we can say PALM01. Nominal interest rate was 0.1 in the example of the test case. Day count convention is important. Currency was USD. Maturity date was 1st of January 2014. Initial exchange date 1st of January 2013. And notional principal was 3,000 USD. What is important as well is status date. This has to be set as well. And the interest, of course, as we want the interest payments. If we don't specify the interest, let's try it like this. You see, we just have the initial exchange that we deposit 3,000 USD into the contract and the repayment at maturity. Here you see the cash flow, but there are no interest payments. So let's add the interest payments as well. The anchor for interest payments was also the 1st of January 2013, and then we had the monthly payments. A cycle for monthly payments is specified like this. Now we see as well the interest payments on every month. This is the initial exchange date, and then on February, March, and so on, up to, we see as well the last interest payment on the 1st of January 2014. This table exactly matches what we saw in the test case in the JSON file. Using this demo app is quite convenient to get the view of the cash flow, to see what the contract actually does. So let me now show you the Actus tests for the Haskell implementation of the Actus framework. We need to change the directory to malo Actus. Then we can run our tests of the Actus code by running cabal run malo Actus test. First of all, we see the results of running the test cases provided by Actus. The test framework checks our Haskell implementation of the Actus framework. In addition, there are tests for the Marlow representation of Actus contracts, as well as some initial quick check test cases. For the Actus test suite, we see test cases per Actus contract type. You can see that we have implemented the contract types PALM, LAM, NAM, AN, stock, options, future, COM, which stands for commodity, cash, CLM, call money, swaps, CEG, that stands for credit enhancement guarantees, which we have partially implemented as well. You can also recognize the test identifier that we saw in the JSON file that specifies the test case. Actus schedules events like interest payments when constructing a contract. In addition, there are also contract types that allow unscheduled events. With Marlow, we currently only support fixed schedules. That means we need to know all the event dates in advance. This is due to the nature of Marlow, as we explicitly unfold all the possible execution paths in the Marlow contract at construction of the contract. In order to get the Marlow contract from an Actus contract, the Actus framework generates the projected cash flows. Based on the projected cash flows, the framework generates a Marlow contract. An Actus contract is specified by a JSON configuration file. as indicated in the snippet on the side. The contract type is also just a configuration parameter, as you can see in the example where the contract type is set to PAM.